She ruled an empire that spanned a quarter of the earth. Her name defined an entire age. Queen Victoria, grandmother of Europe, icon of British power, symbol of an era. But here's what they don't tell you. Victoria wasn't British. Not genetically. Her DNA was almost entirely German. And buried in that German bloodline was a single genetic mutation that would kill her children, topple empires, and trigger a revolution that changed world history forever. In 2009, scientists finally sequenced the mutation. They found hemophilia B, not A, like doctors had claimed for a century. The diagnosis was wrong. The history books were wrong. And when the truth came out, it revealed something even more disturbing. The mutation appeared suddenly in Victoria's line. No trace in her ancestors. No explanation. Just a random genetic error that shouldn't exist. Unless Victoria wasn't who everyone thought she was. Unless her father wasn't the Duke of Kent. Unless the entire royal bloodline is built on a lie. The evidence is there. Buried in forensic samples, written in DNA. But the royal family refuses to test Victoria's remains. They've blocked every attempt. Why? What are they hiding? This is the story of how one woman's DNA killed empires, rewrote medical history, and exposed the darkest secret of European royalty. And it starts with a mutation that should have been impossible. May 24th, 1819, Kensington Palace, London. A baby girl is born to Edward, Duke of Kent, and his wife, Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld. They name her Alexandrina Victoria. The Duke of Kent is 52 years old. He's the fourth son of King George III, a man with no real claim to the throne. His wife is 32, a German princess from a minor duchy most people have never heard of. The pregnancy is unexpected. The birth is unremarkable. Nobody thinks this child will ever become queen. But within a year, everything changes. Edward, Duke of Kent, catches pneumonia and dies. Victoria is 8 months old. Her father is gone. Her mother is a German widow with no money, no power, and no allies in the British court. They survive on handouts. They live in Kensington Palace like squatters. The little girl grows up speaking German at home. Her mother's language, her mother's customs, her mother's world. English is a second language, learned later. Victoria's childhood is German. Her tutors are German. Her mother's advisor, a man named John Conroy, controls every aspect of her life. The British court barely acknowledges her existence. Then, in 1837, everything changes again. King William IV dies. Victoria is 18 years old. By a series of deaths and accidents, she's suddenly next in line. On June 20th, 1837, she becomes Queen of the United Kingdom, a German-speaking teenager with no training and no preparation. The British establishment is horrified. A German queen? Impossible. Unacceptable. But the law is clear. She's the heir. She takes the throne. And for the next 63 years, she will rule an empire. But here's what the history books skip over. Victoria's bloodline wasn't just German. It was entirely German. Her father, Edward, Duke of Kent, belonged to the House of Hanover. The Hanoverians weren't British. They were imported from Germany in 1714, when the British throne needed a Protestant heir. King George I, Victoria's great-great-grandfather, was born in Hanover, Germany. He barely spoke English. He ruled Britain, but lived like a German prince. His son George II, same story. German wife, German customs, German advisors. The entire dynasty was German in everything but name. Victoria's mother made it worse. Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld came from Coburg, a tiny German duchy famous for producing royal brides. The Coburgs were professional dynasty builders. They married into every major royal house in Europe. Victoria's mother spoke German, wrote letters in German, raised Victoria as a German princess. Then Victoria married her first cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, another German. Albert was born in Coburg, raised in Coburg, spoke German as his first language. When Victoria and Albert married in 1840, they united two German houses at the center of European royalty. Their children, 9 of them, were raised speaking German. Family letters were written in German. Holidays followed German traditions. Christmas trees? A German custom Albert imported. The British royal family celebrated Christmas like Germans because they were Germans. Genetically, linguistically, culturally, German. The only thing British about Victoria was her title, and even that was fragile. During World War I, anti-German sentiment exploded across Britain. The royal family's German name, Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, became a liability. British soldiers were dying fighting Germans, and the British king had a German name. On July 17, 1917, King George V, Victoria's grandson, issued a proclamation. The House of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha would be renamed Windsor. Instantly. No debate. The German name was erased, replaced with something English-sounding, safe, patriotic. But changing a name doesn't change DNA. The family tree remained German. The bloodline remained German. And buried in that bloodline was a mutation that would destroy everything. Here's where the story gets dark. Queen Victoria had 9 children, 5 daughters, 4 sons. One of her sons, Leopold, was born in 1853. From birth, he was fragile. He bruised easily. Cuts wouldn't stop bleeding. Minor falls turned into medical emergencies. Doctors didn't understand. They called it the royal disease. In 1884, Leopold slipped and fell. A minor accident. He started bleeding internally. The bleeding wouldn't stop. He died at age 30. But Leopold wasn't the only one. Victoria's daughters, Alice and Beatrice, carried the same condition. Not in themselves. They were carriers, silent, asymptomatic. But when they had sons, the disease appeared. Alice's son, Friedrich, died at age 3 after falling from a window. The bleeding killed him in hours. Another of Alice's grandsons, Prince Valdemar, lived with constant hemorrhages. He survived to adulthood, but spent his life in medical hell. Beatrice's sons? Same story. One died at age 4 from internal bleeding after a minor accident. Another survived into his 20s, but required constant blood transfusions. The disease spread through Victoria's daughters into the royal houses of Europe, Germany, Spain, Russia. Everywhere Victoria's grandchildren married, hemophilia followed. For over a century, doctors believed it was hemophilia A, the most common form, the type caused by a deficiency in clotting factor 8. Medical textbooks listed the royal disease as hemophilia A. Case closed. Then, in 2009, everything changed. A team of geneticists, led by Evgeny Rogayev, published a study in the journal Science. They'd been working on a different mystery, identifying the remains of the Romanov family, Russia's last imperial dynasty, executed by Bolsheviks in 1918. The Romanovs' bodies had been found in a mass grave in 1991. By 2009, forensic teams had extracted DNA from the bones. They focused on Tsarevich Alexei, the Romanovs' only son. Alexei had suffered from hemophilia. Everyone knew that. His mother, Tsarina Alexandra, was Victoria's granddaughter. The mutation passed from Victoria to Alice, to Alexandra, to Alexei. 4 generations, clear inheritance pattern. Rogaev's team sequenced the F9 gene on Alexei's X chromosome. This gene codes for clotting factor 9. Mutations in F9 cause hemophilia B. The team found a single nucleotide change. An adenine switched to a guanine at a critical splice site. This one-letter change disrupted the production of factor 9. Alexei had hemophilia B. Not A, B. The diagnosis doctors had used for over a century? Wrong. The medical textbooks? Wrong. Every historical account claiming hemophilia A? Wrong. Rogaev's team traced the mutation backwards through Victoria's line. It matched. Perfectly. Victoria carried hemophilia B. She passed it to her children. It spread through Europe's royal houses for 4 generations. The correction might seem like a technicality. Hemophilia A or B. What's the difference? The difference is this. Hemophilia B is rarer. It's caused by a different gene, and it appears suddenly, out of nowhere, in bloodlines with no prior history. Which raises a question nobody wanted to ask. Where did Victoria's mutation come from? Hemophilia B is X-linked recessive. That means it's carried on the X chromosome. Women have 2 X chromosomes. If one carries the mutation, they're usually asymptomatic carriers, but they can pass it to their sons. Men have 1 X chromosome and 1 Y. If their X carries the mutation, they have hemophilia. There's no backup. For Victoria to be a carrier, she needed to inherit the mutated X from one of her parents. Her mother? No evidence of hemophilia in the Saxe-Coburg line. Her father, the Duke of Kent? No evidence in the Hanoverian line either. Genealogists trace the Hanoverians back centuries. No hemophilia. No bleeding disorders. Nothing. The mutation appeared suddenly in Victoria, out of nowhere. Geneticists have an explanation. About 30% of hemophilia cases arise from spontaneous mutations. Random genetic errors during cell division. These are called de novo mutations. They just happen. No family history required. There's one factor that increases the risk: paternal age. Older fathers have higher rates of de novo mutations in their sperm. The Duke of Kent was 51 when Victoria was conceived. That's old, especially for 1818. The risk of spontaneous mutation increases significantly after age 45. So the official explanation is this. Victoria's hemophilia B mutation was a random spontaneous error that occurred in her father's sperm. Bad luck. Genetic chance. A 1 in a million event that happened to occur in the man who would father a queen. That explanation works. Scientifically, it holds up. But it's also incredibly convenient. Because there's another explanation. One that's far more scandalous. One that would destroy the legitimacy of the entire British monarchy. In 2003, historian A.N. Wilson published a controversial theory. He claimed Victoria's real father wasn't the Duke of Kent. It was John Conroy. Conroy was an Irish equerry, a minor nobleman who served Victoria's mother. After the Duke of Kent died, Conroy became the Duchess's closest advisor. He controlled the household. He managed finances. He had constant, intimate access to Victoria's mother. Wilson pointed to several pieces of circumstantial evidence. First, the age gap. The Duchess of Kent was 32 when Victoria was conceived. John Conroy was 34, just 2 years older. The Duke of Kent was 51. Second, rumors. Diaries from the period, especially those of Charles Greville, a well-connected courtier, contain references to whispers about an affair between the Duchess and Conroy. The Duke of Wellington himself supposedly confirmed the rumors in private. Third, hemophilia. The mutation appeared suddenly in Victoria's line with no precedent. If Conroy were Victoria's biological father, that might explain the sudden emergence. Except it doesn't. Because here's the problem with Wilson's theory. For Victoria to carry hemophilia B, her biological father would need to pass the mutation to her. But hemophilia is X-linked. Fathers pass their X chromosome only to daughters, not sons. If Conroy had the hemophilia mutation on his X chromosome, he would have hemophilia himself. He'd show symptoms: bleeding, bruising, medical records. But there's no evidence Conroy had hemophilia. None. He lived to age 63 with no documented bleeding disorders. So either Conroy didn't have the mutation, which means he couldn't pass it to Victoria, or the mutation arose spontaneously in Victoria, regardless of who her father was. Wilson's theory fell apart under genetic scrutiny. In 2014, he retracted his claim. But the question lingered, because there's one way to settle it definitively. Test Victoria's DNA. Compare it to the Duke of Kent's known descendants. Confirm or rule out paternity. Simple. Except the royal family won't allow it. Victoria's remains are buried at Frogmore, Windsor. Her body is intact. DNA could be extracted from her bones. But the royal family has blocked every attempt. In 1993, Prince Philip gave blood to help identify the Romanov remains. His DNA matched perfectly. It confirmed the identity of Tsarina Alexandra and her children. The royal family cooperated. But when it comes to Victoria? No, absolutely not. Why? What are they protecting? If Victoria is the Duke of Kent's legitimate daughter, DNA testing would prove it. It would end the rumors, silence the conspiracy theories, affirm the monarchy's legitimacy. Unless they're not sure, unless there's doubt, unless the risk of testing is greater than the risk of rumors. Because if DNA proves Victoria wasn't the Duke of Kent's daughter, the entire modern British monarchy is illegitimate. Every monarch since Victoria, Edward VII, George V, Edward VIII, George VI, Elizabeth II, Charles III, would be descendants of an impostor. The scandal would be catastrophic. So they don't test. They refuse. They hide behind protocol and tradition, and the question remains unanswered. But Victoria's DNA holds more secrets than paternity. It holds the key to one of history's greatest tragedies. The fall of the Russian Empire, August 12, 1904. The Winter Palace, St. Petersburg. Tsarina Alexandra gives birth to a son, finally. After 4 daughters, the Romanovs have a male heir. They name him Alexei. The entire empire celebrates. But within weeks, Alexandra realizes something is wrong. The baby bruises easily. Any pressure causes swelling. At 6 weeks old, Alexei's navel starts bleeding. It won't stop. Doctors panic. They apply pressure, cauterize the wound, try every treatment available. Nothing works. Finally, after days, the bleeding stops on its own. Alexandra knows what this means. Her son has hemophilia. The same disease that killed her uncle, Prince Leopold. The same disease carried by her mother, Princess Alice. Victoria's mutation, passed down 3 generations. In Alexei, the heir to the Russian throne. Alexei's childhood is a nightmare. Every fall is a medical emergency. Every bruise could kill him. By age 2, his medical diary documents severe joint swelling, spontaneous bleeding, excruciating pain. Modern hemophilia patients receive clotting factor infusions. Alexei had nothing, just bed rest, ice, and prayer. The disease is kept secret. The Russian public doesn't know their future Tsar is dying slowly from a genetic disorder. Alexandra is desperate. She tries every doctor, every treatment. Nothing works. Then, in 1905, she meets Grigory Rasputin. Rasputin is a Siberian peasant, a self-styled holy man. He has a reputation for faith healing. Alexandra, raised German Lutheran but deeply superstitious, invites him to the palace. When Alexei suffers a severe bleeding episode, Rasputin prays over him. The bleeding stops. Alexandra believes it's a miracle. Historians have other theories. Some suggest Rasputin's calming presence reduced Alexei's stress, which lowered his blood pressure and slowed the bleeding. Others think Rasputin simply told the doctors to stop their harmful treatments, bloodletting, aspirin, aggressive manipulation, and let the body heal naturally. Either way, Rasputin appears to help. And Alexandra becomes convinced he's the only thing keeping her son alive. Rasputin's influence grows. By 1915, Tsar Nicholas II leaves for the front to command Russian forces in World War I. Alexandra, guided by Rasputin, manages court affairs in his absence. Ministerial appointments, policy decisions, military strategy. Everything goes through Rasputin. Letters from Alexandra to Nicholas mention Rasputin's advice over 40 times. She calls him our friend. She consults him on everything. The Russian court watches in horror as a peasant mystic controls the empire. Rumors spread. Newspapers print cartoons showing Rasputin as a puppet master. The Duma, Russia's parliament, openly accuses the royal family of being under dark influence. By 1916, Russia is losing the war. Food shortages, inflation, strikes. The people blame the government, and they blame Rasputin. In December 1916, a group of nobles assassinate Rasputin. They poison him, shoot him, and throw his body into a frozen river. They think killing Rasputin will save the monarchy. They're wrong. Without Rasputin, Alexandra has no one to turn to. Alexei's health worsens. The empire collapses faster. In March 1917, strikes and riots sweep through Petrograd. Soldiers refuse to fire on protesters. The Duma demands Nicholas's abdication. On March 15th, Nicholas II abdicates. The 300-year Romanov dynasty ends. A year later, Bolsheviks execute the entire family in a basement in Ekaterinburg. 11 people. Shot and bayoneted. Their bodies dissolved in acid and buried in unmarked graves. The Russian Empire is gone, destroyed by war, revolution, and incompetence. But it started with a genetic mutation, Victoria's mutation, carried silently through 3 generations. It killed Alexei slowly. It gave Rasputin power. It destabilized the monarchy. It triggered a revolution. One gene, passed down a royal bloodline, changed the course of world history. And Russia wasn't the only empire to fall. Spain's royal family carried the same mutation. Victoria's granddaughter, Victoria Eugenie, married King Alfonso XIII of Spain in 1906. Their wedding day was marred by an assassination attempt. A bomb thrown at their carriage killed 20 people, but left the royal couple unharmed. It should have been an omen. Victoria Eugenie carried hemophilia. Her first son, Alfonso, Prince of Asturias, was diagnosed as a child. Medical records document repeated hospitalizations, blood transfusions, joint damage. In 1933, Alfonso renounced his claim to the throne to marry a commoner. In 1938, during a trip to Miami, he was in a minor car accident. The bleeding started. It wouldn't stop. He died at age 31. His younger brother Gonzalo died even younger. In 1934, at age 19, he crashed his car. Internal bleeding killed him within hours. 2 heirs to the Spanish throne, both dead from hemophilia. both carrying Victoria's mutation. The Spanish monarchy survived, but barely. Alfonso XIII was forced into exile in 1931. Spain descended into civil war. The royal family's genetic curse became a symbol of dynastic decay. Germany's royal houses suffered too. Princess Alice's descendants, the House of Hesse, lost multiple sons to hemophilia. Prince Friedrich died at age 3. Prince Heinrich at age 4. Prince Valdemar survived to adulthood, but lived under constant medical supervision. By the early 20th century, hemophilia had claimed at least 10 royal heirs across Europe. Every death traced back to Victoria. Every tragedy written in her DNA. Here's what makes this story so disturbing. Victoria had no idea. She didn't know she was a carrier. She couldn't have known. Genetic testing didn't exist. She married her daughters off to European royalty, thinking she was securing alliances, strengthening dynasties. Instead, she was spreading a genetic time bomb. Her daughters carried the mutation silently. Their sons paid the price, and the empires they married into crumbled under the weight of sick heirs and destabilized successions. One spontaneous mutation in Victoria's X chromosome, whether inherited from her father or arising randomly, cascaded through 4 generations. It killed children. It empowered mystics. It toppled empires. It rewrote history. And we only know the truth because scientists in 2009 had the courage to sequence DNA from bones buried for 90 years. But there's still more we don't know, because the royal family won't allow testing. They won't confirm Victoria's paternity. They won't analyze her genome for other mutations. They won't release medical records. They hide behind privacy, tradition, respect for the dead. But the dead don't care. The truth doesn't care. And the question remains, what else is buried in Victoria's DNA? What other secrets lie in the royal bloodline? We'll never know. As long as the family blocks testing, history remains incomplete, the mystery unsolved. Sometimes the most powerful people in the world are terrified of a simple test. Because DNA doesn't lie. It doesn't care about crowns or empires.